Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today I'm so excited to have a fellow publisher on the show. And if you have ever wondered about writing a book and how you can start it perfectly, then today's show is for you because we are going to be talking about the strategy that you need before you even put pen to paper. Now, joining me today is Richard Hagen, and he has quite the story that he's going to tell us today. So I don't want to tell all of it, but let's just say that you are going to want to listen in when he talks about things like running away from elephants. So I am excited for those stories today. Welcome, Richard.
Kim, thank you very much for this invitation to meet your audience and to share some hopefully powerful ideas as they think about their message and how to publish it brilliantly. I'm
I
not
so
sure we'll get to
agree.
the elephants. I might have to tease that for the next time, but we'll see where we go.
Uh, Richard,
Sure.
I just want to start off with the fact that, sometimes when people are thinking about writing a book, they just think, okay, I've got to put pen to paper. But how important is it to actually have a strategy, especially, if you're a professional, a consultant, a speaker, coach? How important is it to have a strategy before you even think about putting pen to paper?
It is the thing that makes the difference with the success or otherwise of your project. In any other area of your business, as an expert, as a speaker, a coach, a trainer, a consultant, a therapist, whatever your zone of expertise is, you know that it's the background work, the prep work, the strategic thinking that makes everything else work reliably, not necessarily stress free, but reduces stress and gets much better results. But when it comes to writing and publishing, loads of experts suddenly lose their strategic brain power and are just enchanted, totally bemused and bewildered by the romance of being a published author. And so, who needs strategy? I'm going to write. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to publish. Everybody's going to flock and buy my book, and I'll suddenly be the go-to expert. And I know I'm kind of taking the Mickey out of it, but that is the fundamental approach that super smart people seem to take when it comes to writing and publishing the book. So, yeah, strategy it's the utter foundations of everything. And I think in my context, the thing that I've noticed over the years is that actually, even when people sit down to plan, if you like, the content of their book,
Mhm.
they miss the very foundation, the value that they
Yeah.
offer to their current clients. Because they might not have written, and I think this is where someone like who comes to work with you at RTI, for you to work with them to ghostwrite or nurture them through that project, you can handhold through and kind of gently steer them away from the pitfalls. But when somebody's doing it on their own, they suddenly go, do you know what? I know lots of stuff and I need to
Yeah.
tell people this stuff so that they get this stuff and then they buy me in to get more stuff from me. And the challenge is that's not what your current clients do. It's
So
not what,
true.
when you're on stage, nobody cares about what you know. They care about that transformation that you
Yeah,
can help them achieve. And yet, I would say maybe 1 or 2% of all the non-fiction business books focus on the transformation, and that
I
needs to be
so
there
agree.
from the beginning. Does that is that just my fantasy, or is that what works for you, Ken, as well?
One of the hardest parts of doing the books with the clients is all the foundational pieces that we have to do before we actually get to writing the book. And I tell clients from the very beginning, this is the longest part of the process. You're going to feel like we're going nowhere. But if we don't lay this foundation, right? If we don't get things right from the beginning, your book is not going to be effective. I talk a lot about writing a book that converts readers into clients. And you mentioned a really important word there, and that word is transformation, right? Because it's not about just getting your knowledge down. Because if that was all that it was about, every book would be a bestseller. Every book would, you know, build your business. You could just slap anything together, write down your thoughts, and boom, you're this accredited expert that everybody wants. But that's not the truth. I mean, when you look at on Amazon, how many books never even sell one copy? Or how many authors have written their own books? And I'm not saying you can't write your own book. That not what I'm saying. But when you don't know what you're doing and you write your own book and you don't know how to market it afterwards, all you end up with is a box of books in your garage that maybe one day your kids will probably throw out.
Yeah, except it can be worse than that. You might have given your book to 20, 30, 50, 200 people, and they read it and they go, I used to think they were really good at what they did. And this look in the UK we talk about a dog's breakfast. That's like when somebody, it just is a mess. It looks like a dog's breakfast. And somebody who's super smart, but they just think, I'm going to write and publish, and they might even go to there's a kind of entire industry of book coaches who love to stroke the romantic model and the ego of a writer. And oh yeah, just take 7 days, brainstorm for 10 minutes. There's your top 10 ideas. Then break that down into your subsections for your chapters. And it's so seductive because it makes it feel so easy. But actually, the challenge is somebody reads that and you don't come across as an expert. If you're lucky, you come across as an amateur. So all of that power, all of that value, all of that expertise suddenly dissolves, and they will never tell you. You will never know, because who's going to be that cruel? But they might tell other. I don't mean most people won't, because they're genuinely nice, but they probably will say to somebody else, "Oh, I wouldn't go there if you." So that thing that you magically hoped would solve your problem can actually damage your brand. It can do the opposite when you have somebody or a team, or you do all of that deep thought work. So yeah, we like you. I mean, we have an online program, and it's 4 months of what we call mining your value, because most people actually have forgotten what the value is because it's unconscious to them, and it's not what they think it is. And that is that something? Do you find yourself kind of doing a lot of uncovering? Yeah.
It's like our book process is a minimum of 9 months, but most of the books we do for our clients are a year to a year and a half to create these books. Because you can't just slap something together. And I actually will not take on clients that just want something slapped together. We write high quality books that have a tremendous amount of value, that are targeted, right? So you want to take all of these things into consideration. Now, Richard, I want to get into the topic of transformation, but we are going to take a quick ad break. Audience, if you've wondered about how to create a book that converts readers into clients and then scale that book into accelerating your business, listen to this ad and check out the freebie I have for you today. Welcome back. Richard, let's get into transformation, because that's the heart of it. That's the heart of those books that you can't put down. So talk to me a bit about what does transformation look like to you?
I think this is where, if you don't mind, I'll give a little backstory to give context for this. So, audience members, you may have noticed that I am not from North America, either Canada nor the States. I am, and I know half of you are thinking, which part of Ireland is he from? I'm from the part called Scotland. Okay, I live near Glasgow in the west of Scotland, and that's where I grew up in a kind of uh, normal west of Scotland town. At that stage, kind of religion was still quite an important, powerful part of the local culture, and I grew up in a Catholic family, and the Catholic parish was very involved and committed. But when I was it's a bit of a messy family. I won't go into all the horror stories. A little bit. I was watching your video earlier, Kim, on the website, where you didn't go into all the stuff, but you got the learning and the message from it. And for me, um, the church was both a place of control and occasionally a place of liberation, but predominantly control, until an experience I had when I was about 14, when a community of preachers came in and ran special events in my parish and blew my mind and my heart open that this experience of church could be grace filled rather than miserable. And I think in the middle of all that experience, something shifted in me that I wanted to be part of a mission that empowered people, that allowed people to live gracefully. Now, and then after Glasgow Uni, I decided that I had to give that community a chance. So I joined that religious order of preachers, teachers, storytellers, and they ran a publishing company. And that was my first experience with the publishing world. But now, obviously, I didn't stay there. I spent 20 years in that community, and I loved my work. But I realized over time that the corruption, the scandals, all of that was very real, very immediate, and very personally damaging and constricting. And I fought it. I tried to create change and move, and eventually I couldn't change the system. So I had to pull out. But now I run a publishing business, and I have exactly the same mission as I've always done, which is to help people share and experience a message of transformation, of being empowered. And that's almost as powerful for me. Business, relationship skills, human resources, and building your team without the dogma and the control structures, that's almost more magical to me than all of this religious or spiritual structures which come with so much other baggage. Now, I have no fantasies also about the reality of corporate life. I know that it has its own systems, but I think that's for me where this mission for transformation comes, is that so many people are restricted, so many people are confined, and also they are trained to be docile. And I mean this even in the big corporate scenario, that now culturally we are being trained to like cat memes, to get our dopamine hits from superficiality, which actually does nothing for us. It achieves nothing in the real world. And yet we're built for grace, we're built for potential, we're built for expansion. So that's kind of the reason behind why I'm obsessed with transformation, is because the other options are just depressing. And they are, and but also, and it's just that it's so unusual in the context today for people to fight for transformation rather than be reduced to the accepted norm, or worse, magical solutions. Five instant steps to social media stardom. Transformation is a powerful, deep, lasting work. It means a change of everything, not just a little thing. So sorry, that was a bit of story, a bit of the mission of transformation in there. So
the first thing I want to say is, unfortunately, there are religious groups that are like as you described, but I don't want to give the audience impression that all religious groups are like that, because I am a part of a religious group where we are free in Christ, where we are completely, totally loved and set free. And so just wanted to mention that because not all religious groups, but I have to admit there are some, and unfortunately you had that experience. But one of the things I think of in terms of transformation, especially in books, is creating that vision within the book itself of what life can be like when that transformation has taken place. And then really diving deep into that problem that is keeping them from the transformation. And to me, those are some of the best books, is when you do that deep dive into the problem, because most times people think it's this superficial thing, when actually the transformation comes when you deal with this deep root issues. So I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Richard.
It's a there are two almost extremes ways of creating change or learning something. You have the bit by bit incremental change, which is habit. So every day I'm going to spend 10 minutes writing, and you build that habit, and over time you get better. As long as it's focused, attentive writing,
Yeah.
you will get better. So that's a kind of a technical, mechanical, habit-based change. But how do you change the vision that you have of reality, or of your own
Mm.
identity or your own value? That is what we call paradigm shift, which is that, and that can change in a moment when the conditions are right. And so
Yes.
I think in it, and quite often people say, "Well, I've got nothing new to say," and I kind of understand it. But on the other hand, I'm saying, however, that may be true because you've spoken this 1,000 times. People may have heard similar things 1,000 times, but when they hear it inside for the first time, when it lands for the first time, in an instant, it can all change. It's like that kind of parent, the dad who suddenly
Mm.
finds himself holding his daughter or his son for the first time, and in that moment, everything changes.
Everything changes.
Every
Yeah.
priority, every behavior, every value about money and corporate and all of this thing, everything then is reversed and focused on the well-being and flourishing of this tiny vulnerable human being.
Yeah.
And that's what we a paradigm does, is that, and that takes work and crafts, because that's as much about emotion. In fact,
Mhm.
without emotional connection with your reader, you can never get them to have that experience of transformation. And yet,
Yeah.
most people ignore the emotional thing. I suppose, as a preacher, that was the thing that I gradually learned over the
Mm.
years. There were some people who were brilliant technically; they knew all the stuff. They had the clever words, and they could quote you the Latin and the Greek and the Hebrew, and they could tell all the, but it was dry and flat and unengaging. And
Yeah.
actually, and let's go back to that thing of, where do you start with your book? You don't start with what you know. You mine, what is it that is your deepest connection to your reader? Where is that powerful empathy?
Yeah.
You're on their side for this. That's, if you don't have that powerful empathy, don't waste your time or energy on the book. Absolutely. Who do you feel for? The mess that they're in, the fake solutions they're sold, the mistakes that they've made, the sabotage that they create, the desperation they have. Those are your people. That's your tribe. That's your audience. But and start by getting them to know that you get them.
Yeah.
That's the start of the
I agree.
transformation journey, because we don't trust anybody else unless that we get that from them.
When you were talking about the fact that sometimes people don't want to write their books because it's already been said. And, I think of here in North America, you know, um, we've got so many different types of everything like ketchup and cola and stuff like that. But many people will prefer one brand over the other, and there might be minute changes, but they will only buy that one brand. And it doesn't matter that every other brand is still ketchup and still tastes relatively the same to them. There is only one ketchup. Now in Canada, it tends to go between Heinz and French's. If you are a Canadian, I am going to put a plug in for French's ketchup because Heinz decided to pull their factory out of Ontario, Canada, and hundreds of people lost their jobs. French's came in, took it over, and gave them their jobs back. So I will buy French's not because it necessarily tastes better, but because they support Canada. So yay, Canada! Anyway, back. But the thing is that you don't have the way you say it sometimes is just the way that's going to connect with that right person. Somebody else could hear the exact same message from somebody else. You come along 5 minutes later and you say it in such a unique, powerful way that it touches their heart. And like you said, that transformation happens. So I tell my clients, it doesn't matter if this has been taught before because it hasn't been taught the way that you teach it. It hasn't been said the way that you say it. And I think that's something, that potential authors need to overcome is the fact that they feel it's already been said before. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, but how you describe the sun makes a difference.
Absolutely. And this is if something's been said 1,000 times, so no one should say it again, was true, then there would be a deafening silence all around. And if it was true that just information being there solved things, with the advent of Google or Encyclopedia Britannica or Google, let's get Google now, if information changed things, we wouldn't be in the polarized, challenging environments that we live in. Wherever you are on those spectrums, doesn't really matter. Information does not change us.
Yeah.
It does as part of a journey, but it's not the beginning, and it's certainly not the end of that journey. So so my partner in my publishing business, Martin, he's a phenomenal storyteller and a systems thinker and a systems paradigm designer. And we've worked together for about 14 years. And the last 3 or 4 years, we sat down and we went, what is it that we see in the great projects we work with? The ones that work really well and the ones that really are hard work. And then when we look at great books in the nonfiction space that people love, that when they talk about that book, their eyes light up, their physiology changes, and you can almost see them kind of, in Scottish we'd say, cooing and cuddling up with that book because it means so much to them. And it might be Stephen Covey's 7 Habits or a Malcolm Gladwell title, whatever it is, doesn't really matter, but it has that deep, intimate connection and change job that it's done in them. And we've identified 5 fundamental elements, and they are sequential in the journey of change. And the first one is that empathy angle. But yeah, that's there is a structure for change and a structure for transformation. And most people, they do it as an expert instinctively because they've built that skill over time. But how do you do that remotely in a book where you're not looking in somebody's eyes, you're not watching their body language, you can't see if half the audience are yawning, whatever it is? How do you anticipate all of that? Well, this structure kind of helps you navigate that. And it's that makes the experience of new and revolutionary and disruptive and powerful. It's not the information, it's all of the stuff that you do around that, so that they integrate it and then apply it.
Wow. We don't have time today to go into all 5, but at the end, I would love for you to share a resource if we have videos on that, because definitely I think that's something that needs to be talked about. But when you were talking about holding that book, Our family are Lord of the Rings, big Lord of the Rings fans. So whenever, something like that, we just kind of go, my precious, my
Can you
precious.
see? Can you see Gollum over my shoulder? He's just there,
Oh, yeah.
just sitting watching me. Gollum is there, and the two towers, not the two towers, the two Emin Mool. Is it
Yeah.
Emin Mool? I can't remember. Yeah, they're there as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's not nerd out, although that'll be us for the next hour.
So, Richard, I want to change streams here. We've
Yeah.
got a few minutes left. So, um, now I didn't ask you this before we got on, but um, I'm assuming that you've written your own books.
I have, predominantly in the church context. And
Mhm.
then I wrote maybe about 9 years ago a little book on how to use a book for marketing.
Mhm.
But when I look back at it, I went, we've learned so much more since I did that one. So I don't push that one. I mean, my fundamental role at the moment is a mentor and a publisher.
Mm. Yeah.
But I am writing my next book, which is called Author the Future, and it is
Nice.
a guide to a strategy and a skill set to actually grow your impact, your influence, your legacy through product, and that's books, online courses, because
Yeah.
we work to essentially publish their entire business and
Yeah.
bring in a whole product model for them. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm going with that Author of the Future book. So it's inspirational and practical as well, and absolutely not romantic in any way, shape, or form. Okay.
So, Richard, I'm going to ask you the question, and I'm really going to be interested to hear your perspective as a publisher. But this is the question I ask every author that comes on the show. So you can either answer it for yourself, or maybe you can answer it from your experience with your clients. But what has been the good, the bad, and the ugly for you about publishing books?
So the bad has been we changed our model recently, but when our model was fundamentally as a traditional publisher, we still have a traditional publishing arm around gender, race, orientation, racial justice. So all of those areas of inclusion, we still function as a traditional publisher where we invest in them. But when we were publishing business authors, where we were investing in their projects, the bad was we had a lot of very expensive learning experiences. So some might say it's good, bad. I think we've made a good out of it, but I think for us the big learning is that everybody wants to have a bestseller of a book, because that's a good measure that your message is out there and you might get more clients, you're having an impact, etc. But very, very few business people will commit to being the best seller of their book.
Yeah.
And that was nearly fatal to our business. So, and it's something now we work hugely with partner authors with, and we'll spend, while we're editing and building their book, that whole 3 or 4 month period, we are creating at the start of we're creating their entire 12-month audience advocacy and marketing plan in that period. But it's not about the book, and that's the other thing. For God's sake, the biggest mistake is to think you're going to market your book, because that's a side hustle. You have to be sharing your value with your audience.
Yeah.
And occasionally you reference the book, occasionally you reference you're doing talks, occasionally you reference your podcast, but nobody wants to hear another push of a book. They want the value that you give them normally, and then market. So that's one angle of it. I think the other one is the flip of that is, it is lovely working with people who have their intellectual property, their core of their ideas and their structure, for us a paradigm at the heart of their project, and that their book doesn't have a launch strategy. They might have a launch party but they're more passionate about the lifetime strategy of the book. They don't do what so many people do, which is if NASA had a launch strategy, we'd all kind of watch from the coast of Cape Kennedy or Cape Canaveral, whatever it's called these days, and watch the amazing rockets fly into the sky. I would not want to be an astronaut on that if they only had a launch strategy. And that's what most people have for the books. I want a lifetime strategy for that. 5 years, 10 years. I'm writing this book for somebody, unless it's a very immediate short-term focus, something that in 100 years' time, someone's still going to pick up and be transformed by. How do you build that lifetime strategy? So I think those are they're probably the two biggest chunks. The author isn't just a writer, they're the bestseller. Because no publisher, and even the big ones, unless you're super famous, is doing your marketing for you.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
are the bestseller.
Exactly.
And the other one is lifetime strategy, not launch. Again, super seductive. Throw a party and think that you're achieving something PR-wise. No, put your energy into the lifetime of it.
I so agree. Wow, we are out of time, Richard. So I would love for you to give just a short, quick final thought. And then if people have heard this and they want to learn more about, those 5 steps that you talked about, how can they connect with you?
So I finally put my own website live just last week. So I'm going to share that. So it's hagendoes.com. So that's HAGENDOES.com. You might get a little bit of a pun in there. And you'll find all kinds of sweet, tasty information there. Get your spoon. You'll see even the spoon on there, and just have a good scoop around and taste the different things that are on that website. And if you want to find out about the 5 elements, you can visit a website called the Alternate Reality Company.com, and you can look at empathy, authority, ecosystem disruption, and paradigm there.
Wow, I love it. As soon as you said that, I thought through the name and I went, oh, so I'm not going to give it away to the audience, but just think about this, okay? HAGENDOES, and then say it really quickly together, and you will get the reference.
Yeah, it's not subtle. When you get to the website, you'll see. I don't really do subtle, as you might have guessed.
Richard, thank you so much for being on today. Audience, if you are listening and you want to find out a bit more about book publishing basics and where to start, if you are watching on YouTube, you will see the thumbnail somewhere here on the screen. If you are listening to your podcast app, then you are going to want to scan back quite a bit because we are well into the 400s, and this is episode 380, Book Publishing Basics, with myself and my previous co-host, Juanita Wooden-Radko. Audience, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.
Thank you.